You're listening to Little Rockers Radio. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, have you considered having a nanny to help out with your family? If you're looking at your childcare options for 2018 and you're wondering whether a nanny would be helpful, it seems really nice, doesn't it, coming home to a beautiful house, nice and calm and quiet. To find out more about it and if this is actually the case, we're talking to Louise Dunham, the CEO of Placement Solutions. Hi Louise, how are you?
Oh, hi. Terrific.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the benefits of hiring a nanny?
Well, the benefits of hiring a nanny, and I am going to use the term educator as well because that's the current term that the government's in-home childcare service is using, so I'm going to use the term nanny educator. The benefits of having a nanny in your home. With the right nanny, you have got an enthusiastic, energetic, proactive childcare professional who keeps your children cared for, safe, happy and healthy, who understands the importance of continuing professional development so they can be up with things such as anaphylaxis reactions, asthma, crafty activities, cooking nutritious food for your children, etc. And most of all, who is a dedicated childcare professional with integrity and honesty and understands that working as a nanny, it's their job and they want to be paid correctly and legally and be seen as a childcare professional. And certainly you should be coming home to an environment that's familiar to your children. No more of this, and I did this myself when I was a young mother, so I remember it well. You pick the child up from long daycare, they're tired, you're tired, you've got to race to pick up the dry cleaning before you get home, then you race in the door all the time thinking, what can I cook that is nutritious, that is low cost, that is low calorie, that my child's going to eat, and how can I do it quickly? All of that scenario is fraught with tension and anxiety.
Yes, that time of the day is full on. Now, if someone is looking at hiring a nanny, can you tell us a little bit around how that works, full-time, part-time, and I guess an even more relevant question, the childcare benefits and how that works?
Sure. Well, that's two parts answer to that. The first one is what they should be looking at. There are three options for getting a nanny educator. The first is you go to a bespoke nanny agency, and there are many of those across the country, and they do all the work for you. The second one is you go to a registered nanny agency and they will work with you. Usually, when I'm talking bespoke nanny agency, there's another word for it too, government approved in-home care agency, and that means that the family may be eligible for in-home childcare benefits, which is CCB related. There are some eligibility requirements for that. I can come back to that question if you like. The second part of it is, you'll have to refresh me with the second part of the question, I'm sorry.
Yes, well, the options for full-time and part-time and how that works.
Oh, okay. Options for full-time, part-time, how that works in relation to the benefits is you're either eligible for childcare benefits in home care because you work non-standard hours, you're in a rural or remote area, you have more than 3 children under 5, and you can't access other forms of childcare, and you are a working parent. So all of those criteria need to be met first of all. Part-time, full-time doesn't really matter. It's getting the right nanny into your home that fits with your family. I think everybody's aiming to not have too much movement, to do the right placement so that you have got somebody that's going to stay, because that's quite frankly better for everybody, particularly the children.
And for those who are listening that don't meet that criteria for the childcare benefits, are looking to hire a nanny but are concerned about the cost, in our previous conversations you've mentioned a little bit around nanny sharing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, nanny share is a fantastic way for people that have got a child over 12 months, usually one child. They want to get a nanny, but it's cost prohibitive for them. Nanny sharing can be a great concept for older children. It's not going to work with newborns. And where it works best is where the families have a similar child rearing philosophy And that means, if let me be blunt, if one parent's got no problem with feeding a child Coke at 13 months, Coca-Cola, and the other parent is absolutely horrified by it, that would never be a good match.
No.
Now, there are certain things with Nanny Share, but we can look after up to 5 children. That can bring the cost down to 1/5. So that would typically, most families where we're doing Nanny Share, it's 2 to 3 children. It's fantastic for only children because of the socialisation aspect. It's fantastic for cost saving, and some of the successful Nanny Shares we've done, and I've been in business for 30 years, those parents are best friends. They go away together. The kids are now 17 and 18, and they've forged strong bonds. It's also particularly good if you've just moved to a place like Melbourne and you really don't know anyone. This is a great way of forging some connections as well. And they're just the side benefits. Most people, I assume, would come to us for nanny sharing quite simply for the cost.
And how popular is it having nanny sharing as opposed to just an individual nanny educator coming into the home?
It comes and goes. We're doing about 7 nanny shares at the moment, so that is quite a lot. It isn't as picked up upon as I would expect it to be. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I want a nanny. I need a nanny. I can't afford a nanny. What's the solution?
Yeah, now if someone has decided that they are going to hire a nanny, what sort of questions should they be asking them in the interview process, or are you doing the interviewing for them?
Well, again, it comes down to the 3 points I mentioned before. Using a government-approved or bespoke nanny agency, using a registered nanny agency, doing it yourself. All of those things are possible. My preference would be you either work with a bespoke nanny agency who do all the reference checks, provide you with someone who is pre-screened, reference checked, met by the agency, going along to professional developments as part of the system. But you can do it privately. And if you do it privately, the number one tip I would give you is to make sure you ask open-ended questions, not do you like children, yes or no. You need to ask an open-ended question such as, tell me about a time when you looked after a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. Describe the day for me, etc. That way you're actually getting a sense of their values, their energy, their enthusiasm, and their experience. The second major tip, if you're doing it yourself, is that you really, really need more than a mobile number for a reference check. It's not good enough to be calling Debbie with a mobile number. She could be a best friend who's waiting on call for your... there are all kinds of traps to this, and you need to have a landline number if possible. I know that sounds old-fashioned, and lots of people these days don't have them, but you need to have an address, you need to have a work address, you need to be able to verify, call that person, ask them to call you back, take the full time even though they sound frazzled or hurried. You need to be able to ask those questions because a nanny is only as good as her references. And using a nanny agency, you can expect that they will be following the government-approved in-home care standards that were set up in 2007, and it's what we run by. I sat on that committee and I take great pride in instigating those standards and going above those standards. But you can expect a nanny that is coming to you from a government-approved service to be thoroughly reference-checked and to be screened properly with a load of interview questions. I've only given you some of them, but some of the ones we use were designed by a psychologist. I'll give you one of those for nothing. It's a trick question. Under what circumstances would you smack my child? There's really only one answer to that. And the third tip I would give somebody employing privately, and again, I'm a grandmother. Times have changed quite a lot since my children were small. Social media. You need to have a policy around social media. I ran a course on this at the International Nanny Association with a good friend of mine from Newborn Care Solutions in America, and the level of misunderstanding by younger nannies that they cannot take photos that include a celebrity's number plate or their home address, or even worse, photos of their children. This is appalling. I don't care whether they're a celebrity family or a private family. These children are not an extension of your personality. They do not belong on a nanny's social media profile.
And something else we were talking about before we went to air was nannies who are being taken on privately to work within the home and the insurance that's required for nannies. So if they're not going through an agency where there's insurance in place, I guess that's another question that we need to ask. What are the requirements around insurance when a nanny is coming into your home to work?
Well, if you are hiring them privately and it's all too much of a headache, but you're hiring them privately and hiring them legally, you can get insurance. There's a company we use called Insura, and they can provide an individual nanny insurance. That covers the nanny for doing anything wrong. You need to, though, if you're employing them, you need to take out a work care policy, and you need to have to ensure that your insurance policy is going to cover you if the nanny is injured or something's accidentally broken or whatever. Quite bluntly, with 65% of nannies in this country working cash in hand, and it's a higher proportion in America and slightly lower in the United Kingdom, you're not going to be able to get insurance.
Okay, good to know. Now, you also mentioned some changes that are coming, some government changes that are coming to nannying in the home. What are the changes and what are some of the benefits for Australian families?
Okay. Government-approved in-home childcare was the last to come on board with the changes that are going to happen with childcare benefit and childcare rebate being joined together into one simpler system. So the first thing, it's a simpler system and I can't speak for the government, I can merely make comment as someone who's put some comments in on the draft guidelines and someone who was involved with our peak body for in-home care providers, which is known as ARCA. And that is that there are some great things in it. One of them is that all nannies must be called educators. I'm calling them nanny educators as we get used to this idea. And I've been personally pushing for this since 2007 when I sat on that Senate steering committee. All nannies educators must be qualified to a Cert 3 level in children's services. This is a great step forward. The other second thing is that a support agency through each state will be set up to ensure that the in-home care services are compliant and are doing the right thing by following the in-home care standards. And the second thing is that educators are getting the continuing professional development that they need. And the third thing is that families' expectations are realistic, but also their needs are being listened to. And in some cases it might be that families that have children with special needs may be better served by still using a nanny agency, but getting funding from the NDIS scheme or something like that.
Yes, and all leads to improved quality outcomes for children, which is what we all want, really.
The number one thing is children come first. Let's put the quality services into place so that we can get that happening. More so than it has with a bit of a hodgepodge Band-Aid system, which we've used really for the last 40 years.
Now, anyone who's listening who wants to find out more, how can they get in contact with you at Placement Solutions?
Oh, well, quite simply, our website, placementsolutions.com.au, or our phone number, 1300 854 624. And those who want to go it alone and hire a nanny privately, we've got lots of information on the website how to do that. But we've also got a nanny payroll service called Just Family Payroll, and we can take the headache out of employing without you needing to go through a placement agency. So that brings the cost down quite a bit too.
There you go. So all of the links can also be found on our website at www.littlerockersradio.com.au. Have a look if you're thinking about hiring a nanny. Thank you so much for joining us today, Louise.
My pleasure. Always happy to educate people.
There you go. If you're considering hiring a nanny, or a nanny educator, I should say, let us know how you go. I'm Sarah from Little Rockers Radio. Thanks for listening.